You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. All right, folks, on Capitol Hill today, folks were riveted with testimony coming out of the House in the impeachment inquiry of Donald Trump, focusing on the circumstances surrounding Trump's July 25th phone call with the president of Ukraine. We heard testimony from William Taylor, acting U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, and George Kent, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State. Ambassador Taylor dropped the first bomb in his opening statement, saying, quote, "Last Friday, a member of my staff told me of events that occurred on July 26th. While Ambassador Volker and I visited the front, this member of my staff accompanied Ambassador Sondland. Ambassador Sondland met with Mr. Yermak following that meeting in the presence of my staff at a restaurant. Ambassador Sondland called President Trump and told him of his meetings in Kyiv. The member of my staff could hear President Trump on the phone asking Ambassador Sondland about the investigations. Ambassador Sondland told President Trump that the Ukrainians were ready to move forward following the call with President Trump. The member of my staff asked Ambassador Sondland what President Trump thought about Ukraine. Ambassador Sondland responded that President Trump cares more about the investigations of Biden, which Giuliani was pressing for. At the time I gave my deposition on October 22nd, I was not aware of this information. I'm including it here for completeness. As the committee knows, I reported this information through counsel to the State Department's legal advisor, as well as to counsel for both majority and minority on the committee. It is my understanding that the committee is following up on this matter. Boy, it was, again, quite a busy day. Folks, go ahead and just roll tape of some of the questions, including some of the silly stuff happening on the Republican side when they got a chance to ask questions. Go.
Mr. Kent, you said that a president has the right to remove an ambassador because the ambassador served at the pleasure of the president. Is that correct?
That is correct, ma'am.
Does that removal usually come with a smear campaign of that ambassador by the president?
I think the right of the president to make a decision about the president's personal representative, as confirmed by the Senate, is separate from whatever happens outside the confines of U.S. government processes.
Do you have any idea why it was important to discredit Ambassador Yovanovitch, what she was not willing to do or to do, why that was important?
Well, I guess it probably depends on the motivation of other people, and I am not one of them.
The committee's investigation has uncovered a web of shadow diplomacy engaged in and executed by several State Department officials and the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, and ultimately directed by President Trump. We have heard several ways of describing this shady shadow operation, shadow diplomacy, rogue back channel. Ambassador Taylor, you have described what you encountered as the top diplomat on the ground in Ukraine as a, and I quote, highly irregular, informal channel of U.S. policymaking. You testified that the channel included Ambassador Volker, Sondland, Secretary Perry, and as you later learned, the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Both of you have explained that you grew seriously concerned when you realized that the interests of this irregular channel diverged from official U.S. policy and interests. Was Mr. Giuliani promoting U.S. national interests or policy in Ukraine, Ambassador?
I don't think so, ma'am.
Mr. Kent?
No, he was not.
What interests do you believe he was promoting, Mr. Kent?
I believe he was looking to dig up political dirt against a potential rival in the next election cycle.
Ambassador Taylor? What interests do you believe he was promoting?
I agree with Mr. Kent.
The State Department's role is to promote U.S. policies overseas, not to help the current president win re-election. Is that correct, Mr. Kent?
Touch briefly on the campaign to remove career diplomat Ambassador Yovanovitch. Mr. Kent, you stated in previous testimony that you were aware of the, quote, campaign of slander against the ambassador in real time, which basically unfolded in the media. Where do you understand this misinformation campaign was coming from and who was essentially perpetuating it?
To my understanding, the then Prosecutor General of Ukraine, now ex, Yuri Lutsenko, met Rudy Giuliani in New York on a private visit in January. They had a second meeting in February, and through the good offices of the former mayor of New York, Yuri Lutsenko gave an interview to John Solomon, then of The Hill, in early March, and the campaign was launched on March 20th.
A corrupt Ukrainian prosecutor gave an interview to a reporter in the United States and made claims that the ambassador provided officials with a, quote, do not prosecute list. Sir, do you have any reason to believe this is true?
I have every reason to believe it is not true.
What was the reputation of the man who made these allegations, sir?
Yuri Lutsenko was a politician of long standing. He had been Minister of Interior after the Orange Revolution. The U.S. Embassy had good relations with him for years. He was imprisoned by President Yanukovych, came out, was elected majority leader of Poroshenko, the then president's party, and then became Prosecutor General in the spring of 2016.
What was your experience with Ambassador Yovanovitch? Was she working hard to combat corruption in Ukraine, sir?
She was dedicated, as is every U.S. government official in Ukraine, to help Ukrainians overcome the legacy of corruption, which they actually have made a number of important steps since 2014.
So in fact, before all of this happened, you and your superiors at the State Department asked the ambassador to extend her time in the Ukraine, correct, sir?
That is correct.
Did you support her extension?
I asked her to extend until the end of this year to get through the election cycle in Ukraine, and then Undersecretary Hale in March asked her to stay until 2020.
Now, some in Ukraine probably disliked her efforts to help Ukraine root out corruption. Is that correct?
As I mentioned in my testimony, you can't promote principled anti-corruption action without pissing off corrupt people.
Fair enough. Now, some of those people helped Giuliani smear her. Did they not?
They did.
So ultimately, that smear campaign pushed President Trump to remove her, correct, sir?
I cannot judge that. What I can say is that Rudy Giuliani's smear campaign was ubiquitous in the spring of 2019 on Fox News and on the internet and Twitter sphere.
So Ambassador Taylor and Mr. Kent, in all of your combined decades at the State Department, have you ever before seen an instance where an ambassador was forced out by the president following a smear campaign of misinformation orchestrated by the president's allies?
I have not.
Taylor, my first questions are to you, and these are questions that are on years prior to your time in the Ukraine, but I'm pretty sure you can answer them. Did the Ukrainians get aid in FY17?
Did they get any aid in FY17?
Yeah.
Any? Yes, sir. They did get assistance.
And they got security assistance as well.
They did.
And if I said that number was circa, in military assistance, around $270 million, would that probably be accurate? Mr.
Close.
King, about right?
Yeah.
Did they get aid in FY18,
Yes, sir.
including security assistance?
Including security assistance.
We've already talked about the javelins, the anti-tank missiles that they were not able to purchase in previous administrations. Have they gotten security assistance in FY19?
Yes, sir.
Prior to the $400 million or so that we're discussing or been discussing a lot here today?
They got some previous year, some probably FY18 assistance, but George, you may know.
It takes a while once money is obligated to actually reach the country. There were 2 island-class ships that just arrived in the port of Odessa, and that was with prior year money. So there's about a lag of a year.
My point is that we have been supporting the Ukrainians under this administration in order to help them kick out the Russians who invaded their country.
Yes, sir.
100%.
Ambassador Taylor, you earlier testifying that Ukrainian officials did not become aware of potential U.S. assistance being withheld until August 29th. Is that accurate?
That's my understanding, Mr. Hurd.
Would you find it surprising if a Ukrainian official knew about that sooner and did not contact you?
I can answer that it was only after August 29th, when the political article came out, that I got calls from several of the Ukrainian officials.
Good copy. Mr. Kent, had you had any Ukrainian official contacting you concerned about, when was the first time a Ukrainian official contacted you concerned about potential withholding of U.S. aid?
It was after the article in Political came out in that first intense week of September.
Gotcha. So after that August 29th conversation. There's a lot of talk about Rudy Giuliani and who he was and wasn't meeting. Do we know or have an idea of the Ukrainian officials that he was meeting with over the last couple of years?
I don't, sir.
Have you had any Ukrainian officials call you after a meeting with Rudy Giuliani concerned about the nature or the context of that conversation?
Yes. Mr. Yermak has expressed concern about his interactions with Mr. Giuliani.
And I believe that meeting was somewhere in late August, is that correct?
There were meetings and there were, I think, also phone calls.
And y'all have talked many times that y'all are still concerned about corruption in Ukraine, is that correct?
Sir.
Have we seen whatever this anti-corruption statement we wanted the Ukrainians to make?
Are you referring to the statement that was being negotiated between Kurt Volker, Gordon Sondland, and Andrei Yermak?
Yes.
That was not an anti-corruption statement, sir.
What was the statement?
I think if you go back to the back and forth of WhatsApps that were shared by Kurt Volker, they shared a draft with Rudy Giuliani, and Rudy Giuliani said it would not be acceptable if it didn't mention Biden-Burisma in 2016.
But that statement was never agreed to or was never issued by the Ukrainian officials? Is that correct?
No statement of that sort was issued, correct.
And have U.S. businesses ever contacted y'all concerned about corruption within Ukraine?
Yes, sir.
As of this year even?
Yes, sir.
Because the concern is not just how Ukrainian businesses run by oligarchs are being operated. It's also concerns about how the Ukrainian government is dealing with American businesses trying to operate in Ukraine. Is that accurate?
American businesses are very concerned about the judicial system in particular. Yes, sir.
All right, folks, let's go ahead and break this thing down. Joining us on FaceTime, Monique Presley, of course, crisis manager and lawyer as well, joining us right here in the studio. We have, of course, Monique, you there?
I'm here.
All right, cool. Just want to make sure. Also, we have Michael Brown, former vice chair, DNC Finance Committee, and also A. Scott Bolden, former chair, National Bar Association, Political Action Committee. Monique, I want to start with you first and foremost. Your thoughts on today. Republicans pretty much embarrassed themselves with their questions. But overall, your assessment, was it a successful first day on behalf of Democrats in laying out the facts of this case against Donald Trump?
Oh, absolutely. They couldn't have hoped for a better first day out. Those two witnesses are the dream of any prosecuting attorney, any defense attorney. I mean, those witnesses had their own representation there, and their lawyers never had to as much as lean in, like not one time. It was a textbook presentation from career public servants who came with one agenda, and that was to share facts and information that they either knew about because they were personally involved or knew about because the information had been provided to them. The new format that obviously is different than the last kangaroo court proceedings that we had, where it was basically the Schiff show, right? And his second was the Democratic counsel. And between the two of them, they did some of the most flawless execution of examination of these witnesses that you could hope for without all of the ping-ponging and back and forth and interrupting. So the case was laid out. The only criticism that I really had is, look, this day is a win. Go back to legislating or something. There's no harm in finishing early, because once the examination was done by counsel, by House counsel, Mr. Goodwin, and when Mr. Schiff had finished, then it was really just turning it over to the Republicans for what was, a counsel who had no facts. I don't blame him for the hideous job he did. It was hideous, but it's hideous because the president's just dead wrong, and everybody knows it. And so this attorney is trying to hold on to his integrity and still find some questions to ask. And it was horrible. And then the GOP just did what they always do, which is talk about other things and try to make them relevant. I mean, Obama, Clinton, you name it, Biden, we were everywhere. We were everywhere but on President Trump and his bribery and his extortion.
Michael Brown, what's interesting is that, again, when you watch Republicans, what they were trying to do, well, it really wasn't quite bribery because it didn't actually go through. That's sort of like saying, it's like I know that, but it's sort of like they didn't buy the cocaine, so don't arrest me for selling cocaine. It's pretty stupid when you look at this, and they throwing every other thing out there, and it was utterly hilarious. But I also think having two individuals, career diplomat individuals who look, they understand what the job is, just methodically walk through a timeline. It's a little hard to fight that.
And as Monique mentioned, Chairman Schiff just did a wonderful job, masterful in setting everything up and the way he structured everything. But also, what I found also interesting was Jim Jordan seems to think if he screams, it makes his point for him. Just because he yells.
Louder is better.
Exactly, Monique. Every time he screams, it's just incredible to me. But
then, of course, he never heard any of the people who were screaming when wrestlers were being sexually assaulted by coaches at Ohio State.
True.
Right, Jim? Right, Jim, you'd remember those screams.
He says those are allegations.
Yeah, okay.
Mere allegations.
Yeah.
But, you know, what different from, obviously we all remember when Mr. Mueller testified. These two gentlemen were the same kind of, can't get any more upstanding than they are, but their presentation was much different. They certainly articulated themselves.
Mueller didn't
much
want to do it, okay?
I think that's right.
He
didn't want to be there.
And he didn't, and frankly, Mueller didn't have the guts to go ahead and lay out really what took place. It was sort of like, just read my damn report. You know, that's why we have your ass sitting in front of the damn stand right now.
That's right.
And Scott, what you also had here, again, Republicans who were trying to entrap them in the answers, but they couldn't. I mean, I can't recall the last time you had a congressional testimony where you had two witnesses who pretty much walked out unscathed.
Well, you know, from a criminal defense standpoint, from a trial lawyer standpoint, lies have no details. Remember, lies have no details. Both of these witnesses gave you details. They committed to propositions. They committed to facts. Once you do that, when you get to cross-examination, you can't undo what they've committed to, because all they have to do is keep committing to it, and if it's the truth, they don't have to think through any lies. So they had a lot of detail.
Unlike Donald Trump, who's got to think through every lie he tells.
It's all up against the wall. Let's see what sticks. The other thing that was a real challenge that we were looking for was Schiff's leadership. Could he keep control of this hearing? Could he keep the Republicans? They made a motion early on to bring the whistleblower in as a witness. He deflected that until the end of the hearing, and so he gets high marks for keeping not only order and control, but even the Republicans on camera had to maintain some level of decorum, and it still didn't stop their silliness and them trying to cross-examine these two very strong witnesses. All of this is really scripted out, and they not only scripted it out, but they acted and played on the script to a fault. And so today was a great day for the Democrats. The Republicans have to figure out whether they want to argue about process or whether they want to argue about whether a crime was committed and this is an impeachable offense. It doesn't really matter. These are bad acts. These are high crimes and misdemeanors and bad acts, and we saw that play out today. And we're going to see it play out again with other witnesses. And to be honest with you, the Republicans are going to struggle to cross-examine and struggle to make a case against the Democrats for these bad acts of the president.
Monique, also, I have a great appreciation for shade. Congressman Elise Stefanik, of course, who, she was touting the other day how she's, the youngest member in Congress or something along those lines. Adam Schiff really did just throw some shade her way. Henry, go to my iPad.
As the gentlewoman should know, if she was present for the deposition.
Which I was, Mr.
For some of them, yes.
Positions.
As the gentlewoman should know, if she was present for the deposition.
Which I was, Mr.
For some of them, yes.
Roll it again.
Positions.
As the gentlewoman should know, if she was present for the deposition.
Which I was, Mr.
For some
Chairman.
of them, yes.
Come on back. Monique, okay, don't sit here and be an ass by saying, oh, I was there. And he's like, yeah, but not all of them.
Well, and the thing is that, and I confess, like, I was carrying my phone around with me everywhere today so that I could watch in real time. And she was the first up at bat. And it really is like the senior statesman on the committee set her up, because before they could even ask the first question, she came in with that point of order and decided she was just going to, do her thing. And I don't know how she just didn't know that ranking membership is just not the one that you do that with. And you know the rules, and you know you have an opportunity to ask questions. And what she was trying to say is that they couldn't. And he was saying, no, what you're trying to do with your question is out the whistleblower. And I'm not going to let you do that. That doesn't mean that you can't ask questions. You know you're going to get a chance to ask questions today. But the other thing that I wanted to point out, Roland, is they weren't just detailed, these witnesses. They have receipts, and the GOP can't say, we'll prove that this was said on this day and this day, because they testified that they took contemporaneous notes, which I know Scott knows how important that is in a court of law, because you can get in things that otherwise would be ranked hearsay. But if you have some contemporaneous note-taking reflecting when it happened, and that's the only way that you can establish certain things, they have that. But listen here, the doggone State Department, Trump has people holding the notes. So there are receipts. They have turned them in. It's government property. And the GOP can't say, we'll prove it, because then they're going to be like, holla at your boy. You know,
they have the proof.
Your boy has the proof. It's not us.
Okay,
we turned over our notes.
And speaking of that, of course, Michael, you made this point about Representative Jim Jordan. He was real loud and, oh, how this is a sham. And again, the absolute shade of Congressman Jeff Welch, you know what? If this was the movie How High, I would need some baby powder by how he's got pimp slapped by Congressman Welch. You know I got to go ahead and play it. Here, go to my iPad.
Get the chance. We will never get the chance to see the whistleblower raise his right hand, swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. We'll never get that chance. More importantly, the American people won't get that chance. This anonymous so-called whistleblower with no firsthand knowledge, who's biased against the president, who worked with Joe Biden, who is the reason we're all sitting here today, will never get a chance to question that individual. Democrats are trying to impeach the president based on all that, 11 and a half months before an election. We'll not get to check out his credibility, his motivations, his bias. I said this last week, but this is a sad day. This is a sad day for this country. You think about what the Democrats have put our nation through for the last 3 years. Started July of 2016 when they spied on 2 American citizens associated with the presidential campaign, and all that unfolded with the Mueller investigation after that. And when that didn't work, here we are. Based on this. The American people see through all this. They understand the facts support the president. They understand this process is unfair, and they see through the whole darn sham. With that, I yield back.
Wait.
Mr. Welch.
Go back.
Thank you. I say to my colleague, I'd be glad to have the person who started it all come in and testify. President Trump is welcome to take a seat right there.
That's it, Mike. I mean, all that, he was like, that's a minute and a half. I'm going to smack you with 10 seconds.
But there's nothing.
And Mueller did not have that either ability. He either wasn't granted the ability to do it, didn't want to do it, didn't push back, whatever the reason. But this congressman said, put him in the seat, have him raise his hand. And that's the one thing Trump had to do, except for his written answers, which were, obviously, those are under oath. And there's already been some questions about whether his answers are correct or not from the Mueller report.
Put him in the seat.
Put him in the seat. I
got to play this last one. I'm going to really need Scott to explain this one here. Again, I love it when they get cute. And I don't know why is it some of the most stupid members of Congress come from Texas. On the Republican side, but on the Republican side, like Louis Gohmert, okay, and this other goober, John Ratcliffe. How dumb are you to make the argument for the other side, and then you sounded stupid in making the argument, and so you freeze and go, oh shit, what did I just say? Y'all, watch this idiot.
If they impeach President Trump for blackmail or extortion or making threats or demand, they have to call President Trump a liar to do it. I yield back. If they impeach President Trump for blackmail or extortion or making threats or demand, they have to call President Trump a liar to do it. I yield back.
Okay. I'm going to provide the proper audio for how that really should have gone. Okay?
No.
No, Monique, I got to do it. Okay? All right, go back to it.
Impeach President Trump for blackmail or extortion or making threats or demand, they have to call President Trump a liar to do it.
Oh, shit. Dude, I just actually admitted, watch the ambassador's face.
I yield back.
He's smiling like, Scott, he's smiling going, hey, fool, did you realize what you just said?
Because there was in a line of him saying that the Ukrainian president would have to have been lying when he released his statement saying there was no pressure, there was no quid pro quo, blah, blah, blah. And everyone else was saying, well, of course he said that because the person who has him hemmed up is the president of the United States. But before that, he kept saying, you got to call not just President Trump, but also, President Zelensky a liar, the Ukrainian president. You got to impeach them too. And somebody, I think, posted, I think it was Leah Daughtry, who was like, can somebody explain to this idiot that we can't impeach other presidents, but we can impeach our own?
Right. Scott, it really was like Comedy Central. I thought it was a Cheech and Chong movie.
No, but here's why Jim Jordan,
who's more like Jim Jones, the cult dude, yeah.
He puts all this voice inflection into his statement.
And the roll-up shirts.
And the rolled-up shirts. And the fact of the matter is that the whistleblower may have been the impetus for the investigation, but he has been corroborated by government officials, by the president himself, by the chief of staff, and by written documents. They held up $400 million 4 or 5 days before the call in July. That's called insurance, just in case Zelensky doesn't act right. But the most damning part of that phone call that most people don't talk about is at the end of that phone call, Zelensky says, I'll do it. I'll have my new prosecutor. We will investigate them, right? Now, whether they investigated them or not, that's the completion of the deal. Whether you call it bribery or a shakedown or quid pro quo, that's the completion of the deal. And all this hearsay, you don't need the whistleblower to impeach the president because you got witnesses that are saying he did it. Who cares about the whistleblower at this point? And guess what? Hearsay, they have corroborated. The best defense to hearsay allegation is they've corroborated everything the whistleblower said. So what is Jim Jordan and the Republicans talking about?
Trump University.
Just BS.
This white guy got his law degree.
Stop it.
This white guy's law degree. We're going to have more hearings next week that'll be public, and so it shall be interesting to see how this unfolds, folks. All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, as the marijuana momentum continues, our good friends at marijuanastock.org have already reached more than half of their funding goal for the hemp CBD investment. That's right. If you want to take advantage of this great opportunity, you need to do it now because it won't last much longer. Now, if you don't know, I'm talking about the hemp plant, the good cousin to marijuana with a much higher concentration of CBD. That means hemp gives you all the medical benefits of marijuana without getting you high. Also, if you don't know, hemp farming is now legal in the United States, creating one of the largest commodities worldwide. It's just, again, an opportunity, investment opportunity. And the folks at 420 Real Estate, their business model is very simple. They buy land that supports hemp CBD grow operations and lease it to licensed, high-paying tenants. That's right, they are hemp CBD landlords, and you can get in on the action. As hemp continues to change the economic landscape, 420 Real Estate is allowing you to chase the American dream. Now, look, the best part is right now you can invest in this crowdfunding campaign for as little as $200. That's right, you can invest as little as $200 up to $10,000. Do it now before the fund is closed. To invest, go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org. Get the game and get in the game now. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered.